Thanks for tuning in to the Our Lads Football Network, Our Lads Football YouTube channel as we talk Minnesota Vikings. And it's been a while since we talked about the Vikings. And for the very first time, we don't have a lot of very first times here, so I'm really stoked about this. Tyler Forness is joining us from A to Z Sports. He's the beat writer for the Minnesota Vikings. And Tyler, thanks for doing this. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk purple and gold.
Yeah. So before we get into this, though, a couple of things. First of all, tell me a little bit about your background in covering the Vikings.
Yeah. So I'm from the Twin Cities area. I've been a lifelong Minnesota Vikings fan. And about 6 years ago, I nearly died from a gangrene appendix that ruptured twice. And I decided I've always wanted to be media. So I'm like, yeah, screw it. I'm just going to try. And 3 years later, I ended up getting the managing editor position at Vikings Wire, and it's just kind of catapulted me. And now this is my full-time job, and it's pretty damn cool.
That is awesome. So it was one of those things where it was like, I'm done screwing around. Now I'm going to just do whatever I want to do, and I want to do this, so I'm going to do it.
It's like eventually, like, you're going to look back and like, why didn't I at least try?
Yeah.
I rode for a couple years for free, and you know what? I figured it out. Got a couple opportunities and catapulted myself to making this a full-time career. Like, pretty cool.
That's great. Well, it's nice that you're here. So
yes,
that's
absolutely.
That's a nice story, Tyler. And I just want to remind everybody too, this is the 2024 Our Lads Draft Guide. The 2025 version is out in just a couple of weeks. So make sure to check a link in the description. That's where you can go ahead and order the 2025 draft guide. And there will be a piece on the Minnesota Vikings. There'll be a team page. There are 32 team pages as far as breaking down the team needs and all that. I am responsible for the Minnesota Vikings for the first time ever. And I've been doing this for some years now. And that's the reason why Tyler's on this show. So let's get right into it, Tyler. And I've got to start at the top, of course, and that's the quarterback situation. And we're not going to go really deep into how everything worked out because that's not necessary for this show. But yeah, let's just talk about what's expected of the Vikings quarterback position now that McCarthy is the man. What else? What else do we need to know regarding McCarthy and maybe even who his backup is going to be?
Well, let's start with the backup. It's Brett Rippon until something else changes. The Vikings are right now projected to have 3rd and 4th round compensatory picks, and they don't want to screw that up. So my guess is if they're going to sign a backup quarterback, it's either going to be for like $2.5 million or less, or they're going to kind of transition to forward, and they're just going to wait until after the draft when the compensatory formula ends and then sign that guy. I wouldn't have shocked me if we hear that they've already had conversations with somebody like a Joe Flacco or Carson Wentz, be like, hey, we're going to sign you, but we're going to wait till after this date. You cool with that? That kind of thing, you know? So as far as McCarthy, the expectations are going to be basically do what Sam Darnold did last year. And is that too high? Yeah, but I also don't think it's too unrealistic. Kevin O'Connell is a QB guru and kind of a QB whisperer. He can maximize everybody. And what we saw from McCarthy during training camp, how he continued to grow and evolve, because they spent a lot of minicamp and OTAs really trying to harness and fix a lot of his mechanics, meaning they wanted him to do certain things with his feet, like when he was lining up in shotgun, instead of having him like level like you would with like an RPO concept, having 1 foot back, getting used to those kind of things, getting used to driving the football with certain footwork because he had some struggles throwing to his left. They did a lot of that, and you saw a lot of progression throughout training camp. And then the preseason game, he was tremendous. And of course, he tore his meniscus, out for the season. But they're expecting to have him back for OTAs, minicamp, and full-blown training camp. So injury-wise, not really a concern. Spoke with a few orthopedic surgeons on it. They're not concerned at all, kind of from like a bird's eye view without having actually looked at like images of his knee. Just the general consensus, like you do a full repair on a meniscus and you do the healing process right, which the Vikings training staff has a lot of fans, and they've done a phenomenal job in keeping guys healthy on an overall scale. I really don't have any concerns. McCarthy's going to have some struggles early on because every quarterback does as they transition to the NFL.
Sure.
But this is a very loaded roster. You're basically giving him like a souped up Ford Mustang, and he gets to drive it. He doesn't have to drive like some beater car. He doesn't have to drive like a stock Impala. No, he's getting a sports car. It's fully loaded. Now it's time to go. And the way they've kind of built everything around him, it's going to make it so much easier for him to just operate an offense. And then as he starts getting comfortable, they can start introducing a lot more things. Of course, having Justin Jefferson helps too. But
yeah,
like this is a Super Bowl window now. They are setting up for like a 3-year Super Bowl window where they believe that they can maximize that rookie deal, and free agency this past couple weeks has really proved that.
Well, look, as you can see that little M behind me, I've been a Michigan fan for as long as I can remember. And so I've watched McCarthy every game he's played, and including, of course, the championship run. And when you said he's got, pretty much a souped up team ready to go, kind of sounds like Michigan. Hey, you've got the team. Just don't screw it up. Just make some big plays when you have to at the right time. Don't turn the ball over. And that's basically what it was, that championship season. They didn't win the championship because of their passing game. They won with defense and a running game and a quarterback that didn't make any stupid plays. And when they needed a big play to be made, he made it. So that sounds really encouraging. And, of course, the NFL can use more talented quarterbacks, that's for sure. So what is this I hear, these latest rumors about potentially trading for a Will Levis? What do you think about that? Is that just a rumor?
I haven't heard anything about Will Levis, and I'll tell you this. I don't think the Vikings would entertain a trade for Will Levis, especially because Kevin O'Connell could have had him 2 years ago. They picked Jordan Addison. He just doesn't seem like a Kevin O'Connell type of guy. Plus, you'd have to give up some significant draft capital to get him. The Vikings have 4 draft picks right now. I don't see that really being a possibility.
That makes sense.
And besides,
I'm aware, of course, I haven't really read the article either. I'm assuming it's just to be the backup in case anything happens to McCarthy. It's not to compete with McCarthy as a starter. So
I don't think that. I think if you're going to bring in a guy, it's going to be a veteran.
It makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So talk about that. Only 4 picks. Do you think that when it's all said and done, that's pretty much what it's going to look like? Could you get a feeling that they're interested in trading down? Or do you think that because of the way that they are with the way that this team is assembled, as you said, heading into the draft, that they're pretty well stocked and they don't really need to worry about adding a 5th, 6th, or 7th pick?
I think they're going to end up with about 6 or 7 picks on an overall level, because one of the things with this Vikings team is it skews a little bit older. Some of that is just because their draft picks just haven't worked out. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has gotten a lot of grief for his drafting, but I do believe he's gotten some unfair criticism because he only had 3 months to prepare for the 2022 NFL draft. That was an anomaly based on the last 2 years and kind of how he's structured things. The massive hit on Jordan Addison. Dallas Turner, I believe, is going to be a hit. He played very, very well last year in limited snaps. And he only didn't play much last year because Andrew Van Ginkel was a second-team All-Pro. So you really can't fault the Vikings there. And McCarthy feels like the real deal, but he still has to go out and prove it. So you could have 3 out of his first 4 first-round picks be hits. And the last 2 years, he's done a better job of trying to find depth, but it's harder to find quality guys in rounds 5, 6, and 7. But he's done a great job in undrafted free agency, which friend of mine, Thor Nystrom, calls the dessert draft, which those players that make up the back end of your roster are a huge factor in whether a team can make a Super Bowl. Stars are great, but you got to have those kind of depth players. And he's done a much better job of identifying talent and bringing those guys in. But because they skew older, and they don't have a lot of draft picks right now that can fortify those spots, I think getting more quantity, especially with this class being kind of samey from picks 20 to 70, I think could be a really, really big benefit for this team short-term and moving forward. Because next year, they're projected to have, I think, 8 or 9 picks because of those compensatory picks. So they're in a much better spot in the future as well.
Okay. Well, it might even be part of how they'll be able to add some picks this year. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at the R-Lads depth chart page here for the Vikings. And first of all, let's just take a look at what they did offensively through free agency. Interesting that they added not just 2 interior linemen, but 2 guys who know how to play together. That's pretty smart.
That's very smart. You don't often see teammates go to another spot, especially when they're right next to each other. But look, if Kelly stays healthy, he's still very good. And Will Fries was arguably the crown jewel of the guard market outside of Trey Smith. And Trey Smith came off the market very quickly because he signed that franchise tender. It's a really smart move to bring in chemistry because now you have 2 guys who already have chemistry. And now it's easier for them to transition because now Kelly just needs to learn the left guard. Fries just needs to learn right tackle Brian O'Neill. Makes it much, much easier. And for the first time in a long time, the Vikings feel really good about that offensive line.
Okay. Moore comes in, and of course, he was injured last year. So they also add Tim Jones. What was the reasoning for adding both of those receivers?
Rondale Moore is because he's more of a yak guy, and he's got some punt return flexibility, and they needed a new punt returner. He's basically just sliding in for what Brandon Powell did last year. And Tim Jones is the new Trent Sherfield, special teams ace for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think he only has 17 catches. It's either in his career or last year. They're just depth players. Their additions aren't going to impact anything the Vikings choose to do in the draft, in my opinion, because they're just on 1-year deals. If they work out, great. If they don't, it doesn't matter.
By the way, you mentioned special teams. Does that mean that, do the Vikings already have like a top gunner? Would he be classified as a gunner? Who is their gunner? Do you know?
Well, Sherfield was one of their gunners, and I think Jones is going to slide right into his spot. They have a guy on the roster, but he's either listed at corner or safety. The Vikings have kind of put him at both spots. His name is Najee Thompson. He is not a cornerback. He is a special teams ace. That is his role on this team. He missed all of last year with a knee injury, and he's going to come back. And he was so good on special teams as a rookie that I would guess that he's going to make the team again in that role.
Okay. Let's see here on defense. We see up front, they added Allen and Hargrave. And the thing that really sticks out with those two players are the injuries from last year, the injury factor. Allen, who played all 8 of his years at Washington, only played 8 games. Hargrave, a very durable player normally. Matter of fact, he had not played less than 15 games until last year, only played 3 games, and he's also about 32. Hargrave had 18 sacks the previous 2 years coming into last year. So what's the hope there with Allen and Hargrave?
This is a classic adofo-mensah buy low because of injuries. And he's done that a lot. Will Fries obviously had a broken tibia. They really trust their medical staff to keep guys healthy. And guys have stayed relatively healthy considering, like, based on what their consensus is. Blake Cashman was one of those players. He was very often injured over the course of his career before he came to Minnesota. He did miss 3 games with the turf toe. I've heard some rumblings that maybe it was a knee and not a turf toe. But none of that I can substantiate. But they've done a really good job of keeping guys healthy. And they think that they can do that. Jonathan Allen's pec fully healed because it was not fully torn. It was just a partial tear. Javon Hargrave, triceps tear. That doesn't feel like something that's going to get re-injured. Same with like a pectoral. So those should theoretically just be kind of one-offs. And the idea is if you can keep both those guys healthy, this front all of a sudden becomes really, really, really impressive. Plus, they love to run the NASCAR package, which is 4 edge rushers. So now you have defensive linemen that are really good at rushing the passer, and you have the NASCAR package. They can be all kinds of versatile and keep guys fresher, which will help at the end of the year as they want to try and really make that Super Bowl run.
Okay, and then the other 2 that stick out here, Eric Wilson, because he made a bunch of starts for the Packers last year. He returns to the Vikings, the team in which he came into the league as a college free agent, spent his first 4 years. And then Isaiah Rodgers, a player that seemed to have a solid season last year for the Eagles, the Super Bowl champs. And Rodgers, I recall, has some punt return, kick return experience as well. What's the reasoning there? But as far as bringing in Wilson and Rodgers?
Wilson's just a depth preserve linebacker who's going to do special team stuff. His addition is just that, just depth.
Okay.
He's not very good. So
yeah, right.
We'll just kind of leave it at that. Rodgers fits like the profile that they've really looked at over the past couple of years. They like small, feisty, punch you in the mouth corners. They drafted one of Mekhi Blackman. They obviously have Byron Murphy Jr. and now Isaiah Rodgers. They have also gone for some taller guys. Obviously, the late Kyrie Jackson was a 4th-round pick last year. He was almost 6'4" and 200 pounds, and he was long. They either like those really, really long guys or the guys who are just going to be feisty and punch you. And I think Rodgers really fits that bill, kind of watching his tape. He's also really fluid in how he moves. He's patient, does not overcommit. So like there was a couple instances where Jerry Jeudy was running a blaze route against him, and he doesn't overcommit towards the slant and stays home and is able to get there and be right on the ball if it comes to him. I like the idea of Rodgers. It's also a very team-friendly deal. If it works, it's great. If it's not, That's still a really smart dart throw to play, because he was good for the Colts before his gambling suspension. And then he was good last year in the limited amount of snaps he had with the Eagles. Like, they try to find market advantages, and this is another one of those dart throws, and I think it's going to work.
Okay, let's now talk about the team needs through free agency. There's still a few weeks to go before the draft. There's still some players out there, of course, so some other positions can be filled. And when you only have 4 picks in the draft, maybe some other positions will be filled, or some of the roles could be filled for the Vikings. But until then, have you already done like a top, like if you did like a 5 needs list or something like that for the Vikings? Have you already put something like that together?
I'm actually putting that together this afternoon.
Oh,
kind of
perfect.
an updated one because of free agency doing so much to change everything.
Okay.
The biggest thing I've noticed for the Vikings is there's not a single dire need left on this roster.
Okay.
There is not one need where it's like, I absolutely have to address this no matter what. Other than like tight end 3, but that's just a depth guy. That's not like, hey, if we don't have it, we're screwed.
Yeah.
I really think they can go into the draft with a completely open philosophy, and they can just let everything come to them and decide, hey, we really love this guy, we're going to take him. Oh, we don't really love anybody here, we're going to trade down. And they can really go any position. I think wide receiver 3 is one that they should consider addressing, because Jalen Naylor is about to be a free agent after 2025. He's been inconsistent, solid, but inconsistent. You could look at defensive tackle, as you mentioned. All 3 of their starters are either at the age of 30 or super close. I think Harrison Phillips is 29. And you need some depth. They do have young players. Levi Drake Rodriguez, Taki Taimani, Jalen Redmond are all young, talented. They really like Rodriguez's upside as a pass rusher. Taimani was a rotational nose tackle as a UDFA last year. And Jalen Redmond, coming from the Arlington Renegades of the UFL, ended up earning a starting role at the end of the year. Like, they really invested in a lot of low cost, low risk young guys, and they found 3 that really worked out. And now you have solid depth as they continue to grow. But I think adding a real difference maker could elevate this team to another level from a long-term perspective.
Okay. So what else? You've got wide receiver number 3, get a little younger at defensive tackle. Let's stay on defense. So how about edge rusher? They've got the 3 there. Right now, they don't really have like a number 4. I'm not saying that every 3-4 team needs a number 4 pass rusher, but they're pretty set with their top 3, right?
Yeah, they're pretty set with their top 3, but this team also, if Pat Jones wouldn't have been injured last year, he would have had over 500 snaps. Jahad Ward had over 500 snaps. They love to use that NASCAR package, so having multiple edge rushers is really important, which is also one of the reasons why Dallas Turner only having 310 snaps last year did not matter. It was not a big deal, because they already had dudes that they liked and trusted, and they didn't have to force Turner into roles that he maybe necessarily wasn't ready for, because at 247 pounds, he didn't have NFL muscle yet. He needed time to get that. Plus, he played Van Ginkel's role, and Van Ginkel's playing like an all-pro. So you're not going to bench him. You're not going to take him off the field for 15, 20 more snaps just to get Turner on the field. That doesn't make sense. I think edge rusher could be one that they target. Linebacker, if the right guy is there, I like Ivan Pace, but I do think he's semi-limited. So if a Jahad Campbell falls to 24, I would be all over it. That's like my number 1 prospect target, just because I think he could elevate this defense to a different level with his ability to rush the passer, stop the run the pole in Tampa too. He's archetype-wise kind of like Fred Warner, but he's not Fred Warner. Like, he can do just all these bonkers things for a guy that's just really big. And I think that's a valuable asset that people just don't talk about enough when it comes to playing defense. Okay. And cornerback, getting younger and more athletic at the position, maybe get some size. A Siobhan Revel Jr. might be a really nice fit at 24 if he's available, because he's 6'2", he's very long. He's also incredibly athletic and has ability in both press and off coverage. Like, there's everything on this team that they could really address. It's not the end of the world if they don't, but it could make a humongous difference if they did.
Okay. And what about, is Jay Ward a guy that they're penciling in as maybe the guy who could replace Harrison Smith in a couple of years, or is that something that they're going to be looking at some point?
I think it could be a little bit of both. They do really like Jay Ward. They have a high trajectory for him. They believe his stock is rising. Theo Jackson just got a contract extension. He's going to essentially be the Cam Bynum replacement. They also could prioritize a guy in the draft like a Malachi Starks or Nick Emmanwori. I don't know for sure if they have like a concrete plan that they want to enact with that safety position, because they've done 3 safety looks heavily for the last 2 years. Like last year, Cam Bynum, Harrison Smith, Josh Metellus all had over 90% snap share, which is just bonkers to think about. But they like using a big nickel package, and that would alleviate some of the pressure off the cornerback position, which was devastated last year with injuries and obviously the passing of Kyrie Jackson. So how is Brian Flores going to utilize that this year? Is he going to keep using a lot of that big nickel stuff, or is he going to go back to a more traditional defense? He is really adapted to the players he has. So what that new version of this defense looks like this year is going to be fascinating. Safety is definitely something that they could choose to prioritize early, though.
You mentioned Bynum. Who did you say is basically going to be filling in for him?
Theo Jackson. He had a restricted tender. Then they gave him a 2-year extension on top of that.
Okay.
That's max value is up to $12 million, I think it is.
So they like him then.
They do. Every time he's gotten on the field, he's made plays. He got the game-ending interception against the Seattle Seahawks. He played incredibly well during like all training camp practices, all preseason games. But he only played like 76 snaps last year because they just did not do a lot of rotation on the back end. Not because Jackson's not good enough.
Okay. All right. And then let's see. Back on offense. They're set now at running back because of the Mason trade, correct?
I wouldn't say set. I think they'll end up adding one.
Okay.
Ty Chandler just has not grown nearly enough. His eyes just do not match his insane athleticism, and that's his biggest issue, because he'll have bursts against San Francisco in week 2. He had 10 rushes for 81 yards. He didn't come close to matching that production. The rest of the year, his eyes just aren't good enough to play the position the way the Vikings needed to be played. And his pass blocking, which was incredible in college, has been very lapsy in the pros. So I think that they're going to try and replace him in the draft. And the nice part about Jones and Mason is they have flexibility to move from one of those guys if they need to, but they're set for the moment, but they do want to keep building depth in the future.
Yeah. And of course, a lot of times you draft guys late, running backs, you can even sign guys, and they turn out to be really good players. We know that's a fact. Maybe what the deal is, you bring in a guy, he competes with Chandler, and maybe he's a guy that could eventually even be a number 1 type of guy in a couple of years if they pick the right player or sign the right player. So it's a very deep class of running backs. And so maybe the Vikings can go that route. You said they, of course, need a number 3 tight end. Oliver seemed to have a really good year last year, so they seem to be set there. Are they set at left guard?
Set, no. I think they'll add one more player for competition, but they do really like Blake Brandel. Last year was his first full year at guard because he's 6'7", 315 pounds. His biggest issue at tackle was he just could not kick step fast enough to beat speed rushers. Well, you don't have to worry about that on the inside. The guys are right there. So he played incredibly well with Christian Darrisaw next to him, with Cam Robinson, and he just had he was a good filler, but he had so many issues with how the Vikings like to play. He's more of a square up guy. The Vikings block more at an angle, and that caused a lot of issues, and he kept getting beat to the inside, and then Brandel would overcompensate. So I think with the return of Darrisaw, Brandel's going to take another step forward, but they should consider bringing in competition because he's just an average type player, but you can't have elite guys at every spot. And
Sure, yeah.
I think left guard is one where they're going to be like, okay, we're okay having an average guy here.
Is there a particular type of receiver? Like you mentioned the consistency with Naylor, they bring in more. Would you think that they would be specifically either looking for a slot receiver or a receiver with size, or just best available guy?
I don't really have a good answer for that, to be honest. I think they could go with any type of receiver. Like if they were to take one in the first round, which I've been advocating for because of kind of where the team is at and how you can really maximize JJ McCarthy, I think Emeka Egbuka makes a lot of sense because he's got a little bit of that Cooper Kupp to him where he does everything at a really high level and he's a good blocker, something that's really important in how Kevin O'Connell likes to structure the offense because it's very similar to Sean McVay. When you run 11 personnel, you better be able to block or at least give a lot of effort. And Addison, not a great blocker, but he gives a lot of effort, and that matters. I do think that maybe they might want to go for Luther Burden, and I think the Rondale Moore signing gave a signal that they understand that they need yak guys, or at least one, because Jefferson and Addison are not yak guys. They can get yards after the catch, but that's not their game and that's not how they're used. So getting somebody who can do that and take a screen pass for 15, 20 yards consistently would be really nice to have. I think it's
well. Then you did answer it, so I like that.
Well, I did, but I didn't because
Well,
I don't necessarily think that that's the path that they have to choose or that
Sure.
they're set on. I think they're going to look at the player and decide, hey, we're okay with redundancy because if you look at archetype, Addison and Jefferson are very, very similar players.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that they would be against getting a third one of those guys because route running savants who can create elite separation are awesome to have no matter what. Plus, they're both capable of going deep and being very successful at it. So it'll be interesting to see how they want to prioritize it because right now Jalen Naylor is a burner and that's his game is to be that field stretcher. But they do need to find ways to generate more yards after the catch.
Yeah, are they set, or do you feel that they have good enough depth pieces on the offensive line? Obviously, if they go out and get a left guard, well, that makes that answers that one spot. Mm-hmm. They went out and got School from Tampa. He seems to be a pretty good backup tackle. Maybe I don't know exactly if he's going to fit as a swing here. Do they like Rouse? And also Juergens was a draft pick last year. So do you think they're set since they drafted two guys last year as far as their depth?
Set is, I wouldn't quite go that far, but I do think that they feel really comfortable about where they're at. Rouse, they do really like. Yeah, he's kind of got some of the same issues that Brandel does where speed can kind of get to him. But I think there's a chance they might want to move him inside to guard because of some of those speed limitations. But he is a very, very good blocker. Didn't allow a single sack in his final year at Oklahoma. Juergens, they do believe that they could potentially make him into a starter. But he was a 7th round pick, so that's a lofty ask. But the Vikings have had a track record of getting late round centers and turning them into something. Matt Burke, he should probably end up in the Pro Football Hall of Fame at some point. John Sullivan was on that 2019. He was really good before a back injury kind of sent his career into a tailspin. But they like those guys. School, I do think, is a really good player. That is a perfect swing tackle.
Okay.
And kind of looking at all those things considered, I do think adding 1 or 2 more depth pieces is a smart move. Bring in competition. Don't let them feel stagnant. Make them earn their spots. And I think that they've done a really good job of doing that overall. And I think they'll find a way to bring in a couple more guys to do so.
Are there any players that they haven't signed yet that are still free agents that could return?
One guy I really want to return is Jonathan Bullard, defensive tackle. He played more of like a 4-eye, but that dude is not a pass rusher. Holy crap. Is he a fun run defender? He will just push you into the pocket. He was incredible as a run defender last year, but because of the additions of like Allen and Hargrave and the young guys that they have, I don't think he's going to return. I also don't think any of the remaining free agents are going to return, but I do wish he would be back because he was so much fun to watch. And the Vikings had the second best run defense last year. A lot of that was because of a guy like Bullard.
You mentioned a few of these young kids like Redmond, Rodriguez, Ward, Jackson. Any other players that stick out like that who could be fighting for a role on this team on offense or defense?
I'm going to go kind of a different way, and that's offensive lineman Trevor Reed. Most people haven't heard of this guy. He was signed to a futures contract after the year. He was the Saskatchewan Roughriders nominee for most outstanding rookie last year in the CFL. He's more of like a tackle, but I do think maybe they might want to see him at guard. I think he's got an opportunity to like earn like a special teams role, earn a roster spot, and make an impact at some point. I'm just going to keep an eye on him because if you bring in a guy, he's like 24 years old, most outstanding rookie nominee in the CFL, that says something, especially offensive line. That usually goes to like a wide receiver or a corner or quarterback. No, they nominated an O-lineman, and the Vikings ended up grabbing him. He's going to be high on my radar for what he does all throughout the offseason.
Okay. And special teams, how does the team feel as far as, I mean, I'm a big Will Reichert fan, so I know what he's about. I actually had him on my fantasy team last year. Very upset about the injury. Ryan Wright's back. How's the return game? We mentioned Rodgers, so he's penciled in there, I see on the depth chart. Do they feel that they're in good shape now overall on their special teams?
I do expect another punter and probably another kicker. Adofo-mensah loves to have competition there.
Okay.
But Punter Ryan Wright did not sign a very big deal, $1.75 million on that restricted tender. He's been up and down over the course of his 3-year career, but there is something about having continuity with the snap hold versus just completely upgrading a punter. And Andrew DePaula is an all-pro long snapper. So he's going to be here until he decides to quit. And he's 37 years old, so that might be coming sooner rather than later. But expect some competition at kicker and punter. I would expect Reichard to blow away the competition and not really to be one. But it's still healthy to have that at a position like kicker because it is kind of volatile. And at the end of the day, you could find a kicker that you really liked that, hey, if this guy gets hurt, like Reichard did last year, they brought back John Parker Romo and he was great. So it's almost like you're having just a elongated tryout just to see if something like that happens. So I would expect some competition there.
Tyler, give me a prediction. If let's just say they stay where they're at, first round, they don't trade out. Give me a prediction on who they wind up taking.
It's interesting because I do a mock draft roundup every week. I've so far tracked 321 industry mock drafts since January 1st. And over half of those instances have gone to defensive backs with just 12 different players. So the industry as an overall whole right now feels that the Vikings are going to go secondary. And quite frankly, I agree with them. I would like them to go just with a game-changing player if you can find one at that spot. I think there are going to be a couple of potentially there. The wide receivers I talked about, like Buka and Burden, and maybe even if Tetero McMillan falls, which he shouldn't. But the NFL is weird with big wide receivers. Jahad Campbell's the guy I absolutely love, but I think the guy that they'll end up taking, I feel really good about Malachi Starks. He didn't test very well at the combine, but you watch him play, he's got game speed. Be
awesome. Yeah.
Screw
the combine. Yeah.
He's just being overlooked because of some of the combine stuff. And there's also real prospect fatigue. He was a 5-star. He got in right away at Georgia. That dude was playing outside corner a little bit last year. He got an interception playing outside corner against Clemson. Like, he is just the real deal. He's a versatile player. And on this Brian Flores defense, versatility is king. You just can't be versatile to be versatile, because if you can do a little bit of everything, but if you're not good at any one thing, it doesn't matter. Starks is really good at a lot of different things, and that gives you the ability to do a lot on the back end. And I think he could really maximize things, and him learning from a player like Harrison Smith for a year or two would be huge in elevating that development. So that's kind of where I'm going. It wouldn't shock me if Malachi Starks went like fringe top 10. Wouldn't shock me if she went like round 2. Yeah. He's among my top 10 players right now. I love Malachi Starks.
If these GMs are dumb enough to let him slide to the Vikings, then make him pay because that'd be ludicrous. Just because of a poor combine testing workout, which can be very silly sometimes, as we all know. But that's the NFL. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Tyler, tell me how, because we're going to have links in the description of how you can check on Tyler's work. You're obviously going to be putting out, you said, how many articles do you put out usually a week at A to Z Sports?
About 40.
That's it. Just 40. Okay. Come on, pick up the work. And then podcasting. Do you have your own podcast? Are you on someone's show? What's the podcast look like?
Absolutely. I actually have my own YouTube channel. It is Vikings First and Skol, and we just passed 5,500 subscribers last night. I host the Real Forno Show a couple times a week. We also do some drafts shows called Skol Search. It's all Viking stuff, and then I sprinkle in a lot of NFL draft because that's where a lot of my love and passion lies. It's a fun time. You can also find us on all your favorite podcast apps, Apple, Spotify, and if you love Vikings, it's the perfect spot for you.
Well, you've done a great job educating me as best you could, which was pretty damn good as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to get to as much writing as I can get to now, even though I'll be peeking every once in a while at the basketball games because, hey, well, it's March Madness. But again, I appreciate it, Tyler, very much. And hopefully we can do this again sometime in the future.
Thank you for having me, Greg. Looking forward to it.
You got it. Thanks, Tyler.